Hi, welcome to the zoo, and we're your hosts, Caitlin
and Josh Zanika. Okay, back for another one. One of the things that has happened recently is that my business has been involved in a little bit of drama. It might be surprising to some people, but the amount of pettiness that happens from one door knocking company or between one door knocking company to another, you could honestly make a reality TV show out of it, like Real Housewives of Salt Lake. Like it could be the Real Pest Control Companies of Utah or wherever. It's honestly pretty tribalistic. It's kind of like gangs, which is pretty cheesy to say.
Gang.
But it's not wrong. So there is some, before I go into my own company and what we've had to deal with recently, I can explain why I don't really have that big of a problem with it. There's been some interesting things that have been happening in the industry that are kind of weird, honestly. There's a company, I won't say the names of the companies, but I will say them where it's happening. So this is happening in Portland, and I'm really friendly with a lot of the owners in Portland. I'm actually a pretty nice competitor. I prefer to collaborate with owners, and I get along with most of them. Sales reps, on the other hand, oftentimes sales reps will beef with one another, and owners don't really care. They're usually kind of above that stuff. What's been happening is that there's a company that's going out and they have trained people to go and follow. Like when you are knocking in an area, sometimes you bump into other salesmen because you're all knocking the same stuff, right? Oftentimes what happens is somebody will get dropped off and they can't leave because sometimes they don't have a car. They kind of get dropped off in an area and they're stuck there.
Yep.
And oftentimes they're there, they have to work there for 3 to 5 days, okay? And there's not, like, they can't just request for more area because you have to use the area wisely. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you'll run out of area too quickly. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So one of the companies has trained their sales reps to go and follow and pretty much sabotage the day of anybody else that's knocking in the area. And they're pretty aggressive with it. They'll say things like, hey, if you want to call your guy to come and pick you up, your manager to come pick you up, that's probably going to be the best move because I'm just going to follow you around, switch over your accounts, and pretty much just sabotage your day.
So just kind of manipulate. And
they're being pretty malicious.
Yeah. And intense, like you better leave kind of thing.
Yeah. And look, it's a bunch of 20-year-old guys,
like you said,
they're super competitive.
Being taught to say that too.
But yeah, the weird thing about it is it's something that's being taught from the top down. Now, the company would deny that. They would say that that's not true, but it is true because what you allow your top performers to do, and if you allow people to emulate what it is that they're doing, then by default, you're okay with it. Otherwise, you'd correct it. And based off of what's not being corrected, it's pretty clear that they're okay with it. Now, this is something that's frowned upon in the industry. Competition is not frowned upon in the industry. In fact, I enjoy the competitiveness of knocking.
Level.
I enjoy knocking and having somebody in my area because it's like let the best salesman win.
Yeah.
And it's actually an enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
But to shut down somebody and be super intimidating to the point where neither one of you are making money, it really doesn't make sense.
I was going to say, especially reps that this is their first year. That's pretty scary, Just if you're not super well versed in the door-to-door
there.
community. Exactly. Like
anyways,
it's just really intimidating, I would imagine, especially if you're a rookie.
So the thing that's crazy about it is that the reason why it's in the news is the company whose reps were getting harassed has sued the company who was doing the harassing. And there's like $1 million lawsuit happening right now. And there was a restraining order where the reps can't be within 50 feet of that company.
Oh, wow.
Who they were messing with.
Is this the first time anything like that's ever happened?
Probably, actually happened. Probably not. But it's the first time I've ever heard of somebody taking legal action about it.
Interesting.
But the guy that's doing it is pretty well known in the industry. Mm-hmm. And he should be an example. And the truth is, he's a good enough salesman where he doesn't need to do what he's doing. The skill set wise, he's just as good as I am, maybe even a little bit better.
Okay.
He would probably say that he's better, but
yeah,
it's unneeded. So this kind of leads me into what's happening with my company. We had something that's kind of similar that has happened. There's some backstory with this company. Some of it I'll keep out But essentially, what you guys need to know about this company is that I had a relationship with them. There was a connection there that's gone back for a couple of years. There was mutual acquaintances, mutual people that I knew and they knew that we were both friendly with, and that's how we connected. Before I opened up Zunex in Seattle, I had them service my parents' house for years. They took care of a carpenter.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Admittedly, they didn't do that good of a job, but
you were supportive.
I was supportive. I paid for them to do it. And I remember my mom specifically being weirded out by one of their technicians. And I don't need to go super far into that.
I remember that story though. Like he came in the house to service, and it was like he was there a little bit too long and talking to her a little bit too long about weird things.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yep, it was. She was uncomfortable. And anybody that knows my mother knows that she likes to talk.
And she doesn't really feel uncomfortable that easily, I feel like, either.
No.
So that's interesting. But yeah.
So the guy must have been like a real weirdo. I was friendly with them. I asked them a question about rodent control, about how they handle and how they do certain things. Now, I want everybody to know this. When it comes to how companies treat homes or what they do, nobody has anything that's proprietary. We all buy the same products from the same vendors. Really, the difference is going to be the customer service that you experience, some nuance in how many traps are set out. Like maybe one company has a procedural thing where they set out 5 traps and the other sets out 6 when they're trapping rats. There's just differences like that. But I asked them about rats, like how they like to trap them. Nothing proprietary. I also asked them if they changed their billing, like if they lower their billing based off of if they're coming more frequently. Because for rodents, they come out every other month because they breed quickly, whereas most companies will come out quarterly. Coming out bi-monthly is the correct thing to do because of how quickly they're doing it. But that's what they told me. They told me they come out bi-monthly, and that was pretty much the end of it. Nothing crazy.
Just if anybody just started listening, I was just,
I own Zunex Pest Control. We have an office in Seattle, and we have an office here in Salt Lake City.
Yep.
We just opened up.
So this is all in the pest control industry.
Yeah, this is all in the pest control industry. So we're still talking years ago. But anyways, I asked them those questions. I'm thinking I'm opening up in Miami, and Miami is known for having these types of rats called roof rats. They're actually not usually in roofs. Over there, they're in palm trees. So that was kind of why I was asking those questions. Fast forward a couple months, you and I go visit my family. We have a super strong prompting that we need to be in Seattle. And initially, I fight really hard against that. I know you remember it because we were driving through Oregon, and I was just quiet for like an hour wrestling with this in my head.
Because I don't think you really envisioned that at all. And I don't think you've ever been obsessed with the Pacific Northwest, honestly.
I thought it was cool until I went elsewhere. But yeah, I was not like in love with the idea.
Family there, you weren't like,
I did not want to go home.
Best place ever.
Yeah, I did not want to go home. I didn't want to go to Seattle.
I was honestly more excited than you, I think.
You were definitely more excited than me.
Because I always wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest.
Because I knew that the prompting was real and I knew that I wouldn't want to listen to it, after you and I had a conversation about it, I told you I need to call my mom and tell her, because if I tell my mom, because if I tell my mom, I won't go back. Like I can't go back on it. It's not because I really wanted to. But anyways, we opened up in Seattle, and the very first week, and this is something that's not uncommon, okay? I would say that this is probably something that I did that wasn't super mature, but was it the worst thing in the world? No. I think that you'll think that shots that might have been fired between us were not equal. So the very first week that we were in business, I'm selling like in the middle of February, trying to get as many sales as I can. People actually asked me to do this. They wanted to know whose accounts I was switching over. So when I would make a sale, I would put the name of the company.
Yeah, I remember you doing that.
Their company was one of them. I did not know this, but apparently they got offended by it. And it was literally like, it was something I did for a handful of days, maybe like a day, maybe 2 days. But then I realized, you know what?
Well, they don't need to know the names.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I would rather make friends and keep friendly relations, and it's not that big of a deal. And I have friends all throughout the industry. I have friends at Aptiv. I have friends at Insight. Like, these are guys whose companies I was switching over. And I realized, you know what? I like these guys. I'm not gonna keep doing it. Although I don't have like a personal relationship with the company, I have a personal relationship with them, and I'm just not gonna keep doing it. So I stopped. And then fast forward 4 years later, and while I'm in Seattle and I'm in that market with that other company, I don't have any interaction with them. They're a little bit farther north than I am, and we don't really compete. So, and things have been relatively peaceful. Everything, in my opinion, or to my knowledge, is okay. We open up Salt Lake City. And we decide to go and knock in this market or this city called Tooele, which is a little bit out there. I know that the name of the company, they don't have like a super large presence. They've been in the industry for 20 years. They don't really have a large door knocking presence. They're just not super big players. I figure at some point we'll come across them. We do, and their sales reps start acting really weird towards our sales reps. They start harassing them and trying to chase them out of areas, which it's just really not like a super smart thing to do, because at this point, my sales team is significantly larger by like a magnitude of 5 compared to their company, which, I mean, it's not like we're measuring wings right now, but
excuse me.
Like there's no need to involve egos in this. So I immediately reach out to the owners.
Yeah, and I remember you saying that you just wanted it to be peaceful, and you could knock in different areas.
Yeah, like I don't care. I would tell them where we're knocking.
Yeah,
so they can knock around us. Like I'm totally chill with being peaceful. I send them a text. The first owner doesn't respond to me. I send another text a couple hours later to the second owner, and he's like, "Yeah, the other owner told me he reached out." I just told him, "Hey, our reps have interacted, and it hasn't been super friendly. I just want to reach out, let you guys know I'd rather keep it friendly. Like, we don't have any issue with you."
Yeah.
And then he starts telling me that he feels like it's personal because I switched over a couple of their accounts. Back in the day.
Okay.
They got their feelings hurt. But unless I have like a super personal relationship with you and you own the company, it's all business. Like,
yeah, I get that.
And that I feel like anybody in the industry would back me up.
I was going to say most people probably feel that way to an extent. Yeah.
Businesses aren't people. Businesses are not people. Businesses are organizations, and unless I have a personal relationship, like a strong one, with somebody that's in that organization, it's free game. Let the best person win. And that's a universal understanding, okay? He also mentioned he felt like I was being sneaky with asking them questions about the rodents, and I was super surprised about that. I apologized for both of those things.
I could see how they would think that, but that definitely just wasn't the case.
I mean, if they really think that, they're thinking a little too highly of their proprietary methods, because nothing that they told me is proprietary.
Well, it sounds like a lot of the things that they told you probably already knew anyway.
I mean, I either knew or I was going to learn. So I don't know why me asking them a question about something that is freely, like it's not proprietary knowledge. I don't understand why that means that I'm being sneaky, especially when I wasn't going to Seattle when I asked the question.
Yeah.
So I told him that. I don't think he really cared, but he's like, yeah, there's no need to be enemies. I apologize for 2 things that, truthfully, I'm not really all that apologetic about, but I decide for the sake of my guys, I'm going to try to just be chill, swallow my ego, and be like, yeah, I don't care. I'll apologize. Let's just be friends. He says, yeah, I'll talk to the owner here, and let's be friends.
Yeah, I remember that. And then you really thought everything was going to be fine. Yeah.
The very next day, one of their sales reps follows my sales rep up to the door and starts telling that customer that we don't have the correct licensing and that we're going to get sued or get fined $25,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you told me that story, I do think that is super whack and just really lame to go up to the door and say to an actual potential customer.
When they said that, I honestly had no idea what the heck they were talking about.
Because you didn't know about the specific licensing they were talking about, right?
No. So
okay.
What happened in the state of Utah, there's a couple of states in the U.S. where a salesman has to have a technician license in order to sell pest control.
Okay.
Texas is like that. I think Florida's like that. There's just a couple states where they're a little weird about it. Utah, I guess it had one of those, but it was one of those things where nobody does it. Like nobody does it.
Okay.
And just this year, they decided to start enforcing it.
Okay.
So what ended up happening?
Well, they knew
it's such an unenforced thing that I didn't even know that it was.
They obviously knew that was a way to get you guys.
It's not as easy as looking at a rule book and saying, "Hey, if you have a salesman, they have to have a license." It's not clear cut like that in the rule book because people have inside sales teams. You know, it's like I could have people in Washington State answer phone calls that sell accounts in Utah. Do they have to have a license? It's just not super clear cut and super well understood.
That makes sense.
It's ambiguous. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And newsflash, the vast majority of other pest control companies don't think it's that big of a deal. And for the vast majority of Utah's existence, where this law has been in place, Utah didn't think it was that big of a deal. They complained about us to the ag department, which is like, it's like the same. It's like being a narc. It's like they're tattletelling on us. For what? We didn't do anything to them. We've just tried to be kind and tried to get out of their way or be friendly.
I was going to say they must have talked to their guys. And
100%.
I mean, yeah.
100%.
So,
I ask other people about them and if they've had interactions like that. And it turns out it's something that they do.
Okay. So it's just not you. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. It's not just me, but they picked the wrong person to do it too. Look, I'm not trying to be like Mr. Big Tough Guy, but
yeah, no, I know.
I have a side of me that I can be kind of vindictive. And it's a side of me that most people don't see because that doesn't really come out of me a lot. I'll protect my guys. I'll protect my people.
And you're super proud, which you should be, of what you've built and your knowledge and the company that we are.
Yeah.
And so I think it just hits different when it's your baby and you know a lot of the stuff that they're saying just isn't true.
So this past, the ag department does an inspection on us and we pass the inspection. We pass the inspection. Great. Every single one of our sales reps passes the test.
That's good.
It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But if I can excuse my French, it's honestly just a massive bitch move because they can't compete with us or any of the other sales teams here because they're not big enough. And so I know, hopefully that long rant wasn't boring. I know it's a little bit of a departure from what we normally talk about, but it happens.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people have messaged me and said that they're really interested in hearing more about your business and entrepreneurship and getting to know you. So, it's just an interesting moment in time. Okay, so something I wanted to ask you, just because I know there's some people out there that want to hear more about you owning your own company and just kind of the journey that's been. So what would you say has been the best part about owning your own company and the hardest part?
When it comes to the best part, I feel like extremely fulfilled in a creative way. When it comes to business, a business will not exceed the capabilities of the leader of the business or the owner of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a lot of ways, owning a business is a work in self-improvement. And people who can't self-improve or continue to improve, that's why a lot of people get stuck in their business. Like they can't scale with their business or they just get in a place where they can't keep moving forward. And so the thing that I like the most about owning my business is that it forces me to scale with my business. And what I mean by that is when we first started, and you were a witness to this, I had to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
I mean, you still do.
Yeah, I still do. Some of the hats that I wore were salesman, organizer, and I'm not the most organized person, cheerleader, office worker, technician, all those different things. And so that worked from $0 probably all the way up to maybe $800,000. And then it didn't really work anymore. And I had to replace myself.
Yeah.
And in business, you have to constantly be replacing yourself within the business. You have to delegate. You have to learn to manage through other people.
Mm-hmm.
You go through this transition from more or less like, yeah, you own a business, but it's more like you own a job and working in your business to getting to this point where you can work on your business.
Yeah.
And that's only possible through me improving myself. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So
you're saying you kind of have to grow as a person with the business for it to be successful. Yeah.
You have to, because if I was a control freak and I could not, and I was unable to develop the skills that are needed to work with other people, like say I just wasn't like a good team player, or I didn't know how to delegate or have conversations with other people, or correct people, I would never be able to scale the business.
Like we've talked about, the firm, fair and friendly.
Yeah. I would be a one-man shop, and that's where I would be stuck, and that's where I would stay.
Yep.
But it forces me to push myself into areas that I don't always like going. It's not fun to have hard conversations with people or fire people. Leadership is work.
Yeah.
I love the leadership aspect of it because it's not because I'm the best at it at all. My business is a mirror that that allows me to look at myself in the mirror and forces me to improve myself in order to keep scaling with it. And I want to keep scaling with it because I want it to benefit more people's lives.
But it's cool to me just hearing you say that, because I think a lot of people could be stuck in a career where they don't feel pushed. And that also can be really hard, feeling like you're stagnant. So even though it pushes you on so many levels and you have to wear so many different hats, I think it's really cool that you get to continuously grow. And I don't know, I could see how that would be really fulfilling, really hard too, though.
The hardest part about owning a business
Yeah.
is not that unrelated to what I just said. People have to be able to scale with a business, and sometimes people that you want to scale with a business can't. You can't pre-impose your ideas of what you want somebody to be onto them. You can have goals, and a lot of times as leaders, you see people in people that they don't see in themselves. Like, you believe in people more than they believe in themselves. And I think that's a common thing for good leaders, people who really care about their people. But no matter how hard you pull on them, you cannot force somebody to become or transform or better themselves into a different version of themselves if they don't want to. And
yeah, it's up to them.
It's up to them.
You can kind of show, like you said, the way, and you can instill in them the good qualities that they do have. But really, at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to take the jump. And
the hardest thing about it is that no matter how much you like or dislike that person, if they can't scale with the business has to keep moving.
Yep.
The business has to scale. And sometimes that means you have to move people around. And maybe somebody who was a good fit for one
leadership,
for one season, maybe they're not the right fit for the next.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think that mistakes that I've made, I've often tried to fit squares into round holes. I think that's just a personality trait. It's not something I would change about myself, because I think that I do it enough. I'm going to find a square that fits into a square,
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's trial and error too. I mean, it's hard to know exactly how things are going to play out. But I was going to ask you too, just one more question for anyone who's thinking about, maybe is on the fence of taking that jump to own their own business, start their own business. What is a piece of advice that you would give them that they're maybe on the fence and they're trying to decide what they're going to do and what path they're going to take?
I mean, if your whole career and your whole background has been in one thing and you're thinking about starting a business that you don't really know a whole lot about, I don't recommend it. The reason why I've been successful is because I've pushed myself hard in the same direction for over a decade.
So how do you know you're at a place where you have enough knowledge to take that leap?
It's not so much a knowledge thing. You never will know what you don't know until you realize you don't know it. And that happens with every entrepreneur and every business. Things are always more expensive. Things are always more difficult. Things are never as simple as you think it's going to be. But it's more of an interior, it's more of an inside thing than it is an outside thing. So when it comes to making the decision to open up your own business, you better believe in yourself. This isn't like a trial where you get to decide partway through if you believe in yourself. Especially if you have people depending on you to make this happen. Look, if you're single, you're young, and you can take risks like that, go for it. But if you're in a position where you have a wife to provide for, children to provide for, you better make sure that you believe in yourself and that you have a habit of doing what you say you're going to do. Because if you're the kind of person where you tell yourself, I'll start next Monday, and you don't start next Monday, if that becomes your narrative, if that's your story, if that's who you are, it's not going to be a good fit, because entrepreneurship and business ownership is not...
You can't push it
It's not as glamorous as people think it is. If you're not that kind of person, which you can become that kind of person, a lot of people...
You're saying you have to be self-motivated.
You have to be self-motivated, and you have to have the confidence within you that you're going to succeed. And no matter what, you're going to make it work. It doesn't have to be that specific business. People start businesses and fail them all the time. And a lot of successful entrepreneurs will start, fail, and then hit it big. It's just that belief, that vision that you have within you, that you can see it before it's there. You have to create it. It's like you're an artist that sees the picture before it's painted, and you know that you're going to be able to paint it. I don't know if that makes
kind
any
of what
sense.
we were talking about earlier with the podcast, and I saw us coming up, when I would listen to podcasts and I envisioned it, right? It's like exactly what you're talking about. You have to manifest it, but you have to believe it too.
If it's not something you're passionate about, don't do it. Look, I'm not passionate about killing bugs. I think it's interesting. I really like it. But every spare thought that I have that's not about you and our son is about the business. You know that that's the truth.
Yeah.
And there have been times in my life where it's probably been the biggest, like in my cup, it's been the biggest rock in the cup.
But I was going to say, people could look at you and say, he's been in this industry, pest control selling, for so long that you do have a wealth of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question earlier was, how do you know you're at a point where you know enough that you can go for it in that specific arena? Do you know what I mean?
It's a nuanced question because sometimes it doesn't directly translate.
Okay.
So for the first, I would say until I started Zunex, I did not, even though I was a minority partner at another company, I did not get it. Like I did not understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand because I knew what I knew and I knew how to sell people.
Well,
and I mastered my craft in that end.
You don't know until you know, right?
Yeah.
Just like getting married or whatever. Until you jump, you're not really going to know. But
when it comes to that, the reason why it worked is because it was like, it wasn't that far of a jump. Me selling.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I already knew how to do the servicing.
Yeah.
But I'd never managed W-2 employees like that before.
Sure. There were aspects you'd never done.
There was aspects of it that I'd never done.
Yeah.
Things that I was nervous about.
Mm-hmm.
And
but you just had a wealth of knowledge in that specific industry. That's all I meant. And so do you believe that you have to have a certain amount of knowledge in a specific industry to start your own business?
I think that there needs to be a base level of understanding. Yeah.
But there's just so much more to it. It's like you said, it's nuanced.
Look, there's people that know everything that there is to know.
Yeah.
And they try their own thing and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's so much more. And on the other side of it, there's people that understand selling. A lot of door-to-door companies, they understand selling, but if you were to put the owner of the company in a room with a couple rats, they wouldn't know how to catch them.
Well, and that's what I was going to say about you is so interesting because of the years that you put in. You played so many different roles as a salesperson. You've dealt with customers. You've actually gone into homes and been, a technician and serviced. And so I think that's what really set you apart. You knew so much because you played so many different roles.
The other thing I would say is that before you make the jump, the pain of being stagnant and being trapped and being unfulfilled with what you're doing needs to be more than the risk of failing. I don't know if that makes sense, but for me,
yeah,
I can kind of explain it. Me growing up with ADD, I really struggled. I really struggled with sitting in a chair in school for 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah,
I hated it. It was like a freaking prison. Like I did not like it.
It was just boring, right? To you?
I felt stifled. I felt like I was in a box.
Yeah.
And when it came to why I left my company that I was at a minority position,
similarly, right?
I felt similar.
Yeah.
I was given a range of where my value that I had to contribute was accepted. And any value that I wanted to add outside of that range was not wanted.
Box, you couldn't leave the parameter.
I was not they did not want me to add value outside of the parameters that they wanted me to add value.
Yeah.
I just wasn't happy anymore. I couldn't look at what I'd spent the past 6 years building and see my reflection in it.
Well, and I was going to say too, that feeling, I think everybody's felt that. It's pretty tangible. Like when you know that what you're doing isn't like where you're supposed to be and you just feel yourself not progressing, And I honestly think that a lot of the time that's God's push for you to make a change, Or maybe you've learned everything you needed to learn and he's pushing you to take that different step, right? And so it's just cool to me that even though it's very scary and what you did to a lot of people, they still wouldn't take the jump even if they felt stifled. I think it's really cool that you still went for it, because
the honest truth is that I wasn't scared at all. Like I wasn't scared, not because I knew that I didn't know a lot and I knew that it wouldn't be easy. Like I knew that there were things I didn't know, but there was zero doubt in my mind that I was going to make it work and that I was going to build something that I could be proud of, that my family could be proud of, that would change my family's financial dynamic forever, that it would change the family tree. And I still see it. I can see it as clear as day. I can see It's like I can see it in the future. I know what we're working towards. I know it as well as I know that there's a desk that I'm tapping my fingers on. Like, I don't know. I think that that's a common thing with entrepreneurs. I think that a lot of times entrepreneurs just think a little bit differently. I know that's definitely true of people that have ADD. I think it's my superpower to think like that because I'm fixated on it. And it's a fixation that'll never leave.
You're relentless too. And also, like you said, it's the confidence that you just know you're not going to fail. But it's really hard to believe that, and I just applaud you for never giving up and never just taking a back seat and just keeping the vision at the forefront of your mind,
I think that, like, I'm not foolish enough to think that we're not going to have a really hard time.
Well, we already have. I think
that we definitely have. And I think that
but you still keep pressing forward is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is not always like it's not what people always think it is. You have to be an unsung hero for a very, very, very long time. A lot of people don't know this, but ever since you and I have been married, we've been a single car family for the entirety of our marriage.
Yeah, we've lived in smaller places. We rent. We don't own a home.
We don't own a home.
Yeah.
We're not diversified on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at me, it would be very when I look at people that are similar to me in a lot of ways in the industry, or like adjacent to me. A lot of them work within these systems within other companies. They're entrepreneurs. They build teams. They build organizations within the organization. They're really good at what they do. And a lot of them are a lot further along financially than I am and where we are as a family. But the amount of fulfillment that I feel and that I know that you feel from building our dream and having it be ours, there's no limit. There's no limit to what we can build. When it comes to another company, and I don't mean this to be negative or to squawk, like some people, it's just like they don't really care to be in the driver's seat. And for me, it's not really so much like about control. Like I don't need to be the guy that's in charge. I'm not a controlling person. But I can't be put in a box. And if you work within an organization,
you like the freedom.
If you work within an organization, you're building the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have necessarily complete control over your destiny or what it is that organization's going to do. Because organizations are not loyal to people. They're loyal to the visionary that's at the front. The visionary in an organization is the only person that can't be replaced. Every single person is replaceable with in an organization. Doesn't matter how big the business is. The only person that's not replaceable is the person at the very top that has the vision.
Yeah, well, it's a good spot to be in. I just think a lot of people won't go for that. And
yeah,
but it's like you reap the benefits of the freedom that we have and will have in the future. So,
in all honesty, I think that the big spark for me initially came from fear. I was afraid of being in a box. I was afraid of completing college and being stuck in this job that would last an indefinite amount of time.
Yep. And I can relate to that too, though. I think a lot of people can relate to being nervous to pick a major because they're not sure if they're going to like it later on. So I feel you, I think it can be really hard to really go for something, but then also it can hinder you when you're indecisive with jobs and
you have to be a little bit more decisive.
Yeah. Yep.
I think you would say I'm pretty decisive.
Yeah, you are. And I'm saying that's the way you've been speaking about everything. I think that's why you've been so successful though, is because you've been decisive and you haven't looked back. You just keep moving forward, even when you have setbacks. So,
and there's a lot of setbacks.
Yeah.
But our day will come. There will be a day where our financial situation is going to change so dramatically. It'll literally be like night and day.
Yeah.
Where it's not that right now. It's not that right now, but you and I are happy and we're building towards something.
Yep.
And we believe in our vision. We know that we're working on God's timetable, and I firmly believe, and I know that you believe it, that we're doing what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's what really you could take away from everything we just talked about is just listening to that internal voice and what you're called to do, you know? And I think that's what you've always done, is you really tried to follow promptings and follow the path that God has set in store for you, you know, and just to reach your full potential and everything. So yeah, so thanks so much for answering that. We're gonna switch gears. We are gonna talk about roommate horror stories that got submitted. Okay, so first story. Once I was watching a movie with my roommate / best friend and a guy friend we met at school. I fell asleep and woke up to them making out. I was so petrified to move that I just laid there. I was pleading with God to help me fall back asleep. Haha. Luckily, my wish came true and I did fall asleep again, only to wake up later to them still making out. I fell back asleep one more time to only be woken up one more time to moaning and them still going at it.
Oh, gosh.
It'd been like 3 hours at this point. I finally couldn't handle it any longer. I did a grand gesture stretch to make it obvious I woke up. They scrambled to act like nothing happened. They tried to hide it from me until I called them out the next day. I made them each buy me something to make it up to me, and I still can't watch that movie to this day because it haunts me. Looking back, I don't know why I just didn't get up and walk to my room the first time. I guess I was just so grossed out.
3 hours.
Yep,
of
3 hours. Yep. And I don't know what else they really were doing because she said there was moaning.
Okay, but like even if there was other things, 3 hours, like that's too long.
Well, she kept telling me a couple more messages after that, and she was saying that he kept saying, "Oh, should we write it again? Should we write it again?" And it was just like, dude, just stop watching the movie if you have to rewind it that many times.
Bro, dude, why do I know she went to BYU?
I guarantee that was up in Provo.
Dude, it sounds like Provo.
So freaking funny. But I get where it's just so awkward that you don't know what to do. Like you hear that and you're like, I should go to my room, but I'm weirded out.
I don't feel like I've ever been in a position like that where I feel like I just would have. I would have enjoyed making them feel awkward.
Really?
Yeah, I would have thought it was funny.
I just think it's funny that they still tried to deny it. And she's like, guys, it happened. Just own up to it, okay? Okay, this is your favorite one that I think I shared with you. So, okay. So, one time I poured a bowl of cereal and my roommate waited until the spoon was at my mouth and she was like, it's fast Sunday, which if you guys don't know, in the LDS religion, we fast
once a month. First week of the month.
First week of the month and a lot of the time you go into the fast with a reason or like a purpose. 2 meals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the good little girl I put the bowl down and fasted. Then she proceeded to chug water. And I was like, wait. Oh, and it's also water. Sorry. She said, wait, what about fasting? And she was like, you don't seriously think the church would have you not drink water all day? Ha ha ha. I was like, girl, your missionary skipped on the fasting lesson. I think most of our LDS members would probably think that's pretty funny. But when I first heard this story, I told Josh, I was like, if a roommate did that to me, just because she said that to me, I would eat the entire bowl of cereal. I'd be like, nope, sorry, honey. I'm eating these Reese's Puffs and I don't care that it's Fast Sunday.
I think that we both would have.
Just a spider. Let's do another one here. So I had pretty good luck with my roomies. I've really only got one kind of bad story. One of my roommates who had no idea how to cook left raw chicken in her room for days and it went bad. I was still not sure if she just forgot it or didn't know it needed to be refrigerated. Luckily, it wasn't the roommate I shared my room with.
Bro.
Dude, raw chicken.
Some of y'all need to raise your kids a little bit different.
You need to teach your children that you need to put raw chicken in the fridge, okay?
That's freaking... Can you imagine how rancid that became? I can unfortunately, because of my pest control background, I probably can get a good idea of what that smelled like.
Oh my gosh.
And that's nasty.
Oh, that's so bad. This is another story kind of similar, but basically the roommate, he would take their video games all the time without asking, and he would leave his window open in 80-degree weather while the AC was on. The electric bill doubled after he moved in. He would also leave his food out all the time. There were several times we opened the microwave to use it, and there was a half-eaten rotisserie chicken just chilling there. So gross. Also, he ate like 3/4 of a Costco pizza by himself in one afternoon. I was real glad when we got married and we didn't have to see that guy again.
Costco pizza thing's kind of relatable.
I know. I literally, when I first read that, I was like, Josh just going to read that part and be like, I mean, I probably could do that. But the AC though, bro, in 80-degree weather,
That's
like,
pretty.
leaving the window open is not great. And then leaving the rotisserie chicken in the microwave.
I think sometimes it just surprises me how little self-awareness people have.
It's true. Yeah. Especially with food. Okay, this one's really funny. This is actually one of my friends who threw herself under the bus. So she's like, this was the time that I was the bad roommate. One of the girls in my apartment bought a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper that she placed on top of the fridge. Well, all of us had decided that anything on top of the fridge was fair game for everyone. So I helped myself to some DP. Well, she comes home and I hear her yell, which one of you drank my Dr. Pepper? She was pissed, dude. I was too stunned to speak. She started going up to each of us, staring us dead in the eye and asking who did it. When she got to me, I denied it. I should have owned up to it, and maybe I would have if she didn't come in screaming and getting all in our faces. So if she's listening, it was me. Sorry, don't kill me. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Luckily, I never had issues with roommates taking food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like if you had a rule that anything on top of the fridge is free game.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I probably would have drank the DP too. So
I would have.
And honestly, if my roommate came in like that, I probably would have been a little bit scared too. And I probably wouldn't want to be the one to admit that I drink it. So I feel you on that one, girl. Okay, so this one came in an audio format, and so I'm going to kind of do my best to read this one, but I think it's pretty funny, so I want to share. Okay, I can only think of one funny horror roommate story, and it was the time that I had a roommate. She was adorable, by the way, but there was a really big problem. She would eat little, tiny, raw-like fish, and she would keep all sorts of crazy fish products in our house and in our refrigerator. She was from Japan, again, totally lovely person, but I could not handle all of that. Her clothes started to smell like fish. She would walk around the house and it smelled like fish. She'd be in her college class and she would smell like fish. So she said, I remember having to light a ton of candles, a ton of matches. So when people would come over, my house would still smell good. But once it started infusing my clothes, I was like, oh, hell, I can't do this anymore. And I felt super judgy because, of course, I like fish. But she had a totally different eating style because she was from a different country and she didn't speak that great of English either. So anyway, she said that's basically the gist of it, that once it started infusing her clothes,
she started to smell like fish.
She just couldn't do it.
I don't blame her. That's a nasty smell.
Well, and it's hard too, when you're in college, you want to meet friends.
You don't want to smell like fish.
You want to maybe have a guy over. You don't want to smell like fish. Your apartment smell like fish.
You invite a guy over and you smell like fish, that guy's not coming over again. Let me put it that way.
Dude, seriously.
Okay, my turn to read some. So freshman year dorms at the U, I shared a room with a girl who had a strict 8 p.m. bedtime and had to have Motab playing all night long in order to sleep. Kind of odd. So bringing boys back to watch a movie after a date was not an option. I asked her if she'd mind putting in the headphones so I didn't have to wake up to soft hymns at all hours. And she was deeply offended I would suggest that because she would get strangled by the cords in her sleep. We were about a decade out from AirPods. So she also chose to have her bed raised so her desk and dresser could go under, but was so worried about falling off of her bunk, she put a baby rail guard up on her bed. Again, when the boys came over, they were like, WTF.
The baby rail guard.
Okay, so it's not like I don't have anything. Like, I guess I can't say I don't not have anything against Motab because after my mission, definitely was
Tell
done.
People who Motab is, if they don't know.
Okay, so Motab, it's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. It's just a big church choir. And honestly, they're really good, but it's kind of crusty.
Crusty?
I don't know. I'm not going to jam out to Motab. I listened to it on my mission because I couldn't listen to anything better.
Yeah. You're saying you wouldn't pick it to fall asleep overnight.
Yeah, it's just kind of odd.
Yeah.
And this is something in full transparency, this is something about me that maybe Caitlin doesn't like. I like to listen to things when I fall asleep But I like to listen to like podcasts or books. Just the idea of listening to Motab, I don't know. I don't think I could fall asleep to that.
Well, especially, didn't she say she was listening to it out loud?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the hardest part for me, because I'm fine if you want to listen to something at night, but as long as you put AirPods in.
Or you're already asleep.
Yeah, or I'm already asleep. But I'm like, I don't want to hear Motab, so put your AirPods in. But it's like she said she didn't have any, so she couldn't do that. The Baby Railguard, though, is pretty funny.
When it comes to what you would wake up in the middle of the night and hear me listening to, what would you hear me listening to? Just curious. What if you had to guess? Like, what are some things you think that you would hear randomly?
Well, I feel like I hear them all.
I know, but like
usually it's like some weird book or like a fantasy book. I feel like a lot of the time, or just an interesting video that you want to learn more about, like how turkey bacon is made. Or like some random fact.
I watched the how turkey bacon is made, and it was in November, so turkeys were kind of relevant at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, it was interesting.
Well, and yeah, just you listen to podcasts.
Guess
I mean,
what?
Your favorite podcast is the Joe Rogan podcast, so
actually, I don't know that it is.
It's not anymore?
No.
Okay. Well, it used to be, so
I listen to it. I like clips of it, but I don't usually listen to like the whole thing. Turkey bacon, just so everybody knows, pretty nasty the way that they make it.
Dude, like nobody cares.
It's like this pink slop that they all like mix in together. Like I'm pretty sure they add the coloring, and it's kind of gross looking.
Yeah.
Turkeys do not make bacon. Like there's not a bacon section of the turkey. But I will self-admit, I'm just kind of a random person. I think it's the ADD in me. Caitlin would be likely to hear maybe a book about Theodore Roosevelt or Genghis Khan, or about like some Roman like war thing. Like I like to listen to, watch these videos that talk about like the battles that they had and like what maneuvers they were doing, why they did it.
So if you guys were wondering if Josh is thinking about the Roman Empire multiple times a week, you're probably right.
Okay, let's talk about that for like a split second.
Oh, okay. Great.
Caitlin asked me that question, and I think that you weren't necessarily expecting me to answer the way that I did.
Well, I remember you saying you think about the Roman Empire, wasn't it like a couple times
a week?
A week.
Yeah.
No,
I legitimately do.
I thought you were going to say at least like a couple times a month. Yeah. But I didn't know it was going to be a couple times a week.
Yeah, I do. It's weird. I don't know if it's a guy thing, because I know that there's guys that don't think about that, but I love history. Like I love learning about like people. Like I've read about Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Theodore Roosevelt. I love stuff like that. And I don't know, Rome also has to do with the gospel, with Christ, and like what his life was like they were there. It's all just interesting to me. But yeah, I do think about the Roman Empire. Not like, I don't know, it doesn't feel weird to me. It's just like, it's not like I sit down and think about it for like an hour. It's just like a thought in my head.
Yeah. It's cool. It makes it who you are. Mm-hmm. You're just a unique.
So that was a really long way of saying Josh is not listening to Motab when he falls asleep.
Okay, let's read one more and then we can finish up. I have so many coming to mind, but they're not exactly my roommates. It's just stuff that happened while I had roommates. But we had a guy kind of low-key breaking and entering to drop me a love note and cookies in our kitchen. And then we had our basement flood a bunch of times. And then we had to get our own wet dry vac from the bishop. And in the middle of the night, and this was in the middle of the night because our landlord wasn't answering. And I had to call my ex-boyfriend to help figure out how to turn off the water line in the basement. And then we took the wet vac back down to the basement, had to vacuum up all the water. And then we weren't strong enough to carry all the water back up the stairs. So we had to call my roommate's guy friend that she was kind of going on dates with, but they just had a super awkward conversation and they were about to be friend zoned. Anyways, they were in the middle of that. And so that was super awkward. And then the maintenance guy came to check out the next day, which happened to be the day before Thanksgiving. And he cut our water line. So we had no water over Thanksgiving. And then when we finally got back, which is illegal, by the way, we got back from Thanksgiving to fix our water line. He left the faucet on to top it all off. And there was nobody there, like nobody was home. And he flooded the top floor, the ceiling caved in, and then we had to live in a hotel for the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so that was kind of like a nightmare.
Yeah, definitely.
Dude,
so they had to call an ex-boyfriend, a guy that was just friend zone to help them. The landlord cut the water. Then he flooded it. Then they had to live in a hotel for 2 weeks.
Sounds like one of those National Lampoon movies.
True.
That probably people probably don't know what we're talking about, or a lot of people probably don't. People who are younger than us don't. But
yeah. So explain yourself with a National Lampoon really quick, then.
Just a nightmare. Like it's just like it's like one comedic thing
after another. Yeah.
It's not funny if it's happening to you, but it's funny if you're watching.
Yep.
Kind of situation.
Exactly. Well, that wraps it up. Roommates can be nuts, so pick them wisely.
Welcome to the zoo.
Welcome to the zoo.